Welcome pilots, my name is Hybrid V, and patch 431 was recently just sent to Wave 1 PTU, and it was originally put out as an Evocati build and was left overnight. Then it was recently switched over to Wave 1 now as I'm speaking, so if you have Wave 1 access, you can go play it now. And one of the big changes that was brought in this build, along with some new documentation updates, was medical gameplay changes. More specifically, how respawning and healing works for medical ships. Now, this is in preparation for the brand new Apollo coming out, but this, of course, is going to affect all other medical ships as well. And I had some time to play with it in the Evocati build, and as well as played it in the Wave 1 build, and I have some thoughts I want to bring up, but first let's actually talk about what the changes are. First and foremost, respawning as a mechanic is now a limited resource. This means that the beds that you can respawn in have a limited resource that needs to be topped off in order to respawn, and that resource, of course, is med gel. Now, plainly, what this means is that you no longer can just infinitely respawn in your own personal medical ship. And as it stands currently, a station's medical facility or a planet's hospital is currently unaffected, so you can always respawn there infinitely as much as you want, at least currently as it stands. But for player-owned medical ships, there is now a limited resource. Now, I personally enjoy the limited resource aspect of medical gameplay, but I'll get to that a little bit later. Right now, I want to talk about what players are really miffed about, and that's currently the cost. Right now, it is 100k per canister. And currently, we have the values available from CIG, and those values are a tier 3 bed can hold 100 centa SEU of med gel, and that equates to exactly one respawn, because a respawn costs 100 centa SEU. So if you have, for example, a Pisces, that Pisces can only do one respawn when it's fully charged. A tier 2 bed can hold 200 centa SEU of med gel, so that's 2 respawns, and a tier 1 bed can hold 400 centa SEU, so that's 4 respawns. Injuries get a little bit more interesting in that they are always a flat cost of 50 centa SEU of med gel. Now, some people were under the incorrect speculation that if you, for example, had, say, 2 injuries and you had a med bed nearby, you might as well just hold backspace and respawn. Remember that it is flat. So if you had, for example, 4 or 5 injuries, regardless of the severity of the injuries, it's always going to cost 50 med gel to heal yourself. At least currently, that's how it is in the PTU. And to clarify, this is again for injuries. If you, for example, have 50% HP but no injuries, it doesn't cost med gel to heal your character back to full health. It only costs med gel if you need to treat injuries or you need to respawn. So based on the values I just mentioned, you can see that owning a medical ship can be very expensive. For example, if I have a Pisces rescue and I die and I respawn in my own Pisces, that's 100k down the drain just for dying. And again, like I said, this is a big debate amongst the players right now, as a lot of them don't like the actual cost because they feel it's just too high. However, keep in mind that this only affects players that are using a medical ship. If you currently don't have a medical ship and you just respawn at any hospital or station, this does not affect you at all. Once more again, those have unlimited med gels, so you don't have to worry about respawning whatever. You can respawn infinitely at those places, at least currently right now you can. And with that being said, the vast majority of players who do use their medical ship gameplay either for themselves or with friends mostly use it for FPS gameplay. Anytime you fight against AI, you want a quick way to get back into the action if you need to, but also at the same time, if you're playing with friends, chances are they probably can revive you anyway. So despite the fact that it is expensive, I do think it's not as big of an issue. But that's only because currently right now, there's a lot of ways you can keep yourself from dying. If you play by yourself and you go down, obviously you're probably going to hit the backspace and cost yourself a lot of money. This leads me to the other problem the game has currently right now that CIG really needs to address, and they have actually acknowledged that. And that currently is medical beacons, which are still broken. Hopefully by the time this patch goes out, they'll do a little bit more fixing up of it. And we do know in the write-ups that CIG has recently put out that they are going to expand on that gameplay a little bit more and also expand on the UI to make both the respawning UI and the med beacon UIs a little bit more cleaner and more intuitive to use, as well hopefully fixing the bugs around it. At least I would hope so for sure. They also talked about medbed conditions, as well as permissions, the ability to charge fees on top of taxation. There's a whole bunch of things that they talked about that are expected to come out later. Of course, they also mentioned no dates whatsoever. So despite this change coming in now, there is nothing planned, at least currently, for 431 to add upon this. At least I would hope CIG just at least fixes the beacons in the short term, so that way the beacons at least are functional, and players who, say, have a medical ship that runs out of gel can have somebody come in, get them back up, and then that player can then maybe potentially recharge their gel for their bed if they need to. I do find it a little bit strange that they're just putting this specific mechanic in and not building on the other mechanics, such as having a more robust UI system and a better beacon system. It's just very strange, because we know they delayed engineering because they wanted it not only to be a lot better and more fleshed out, but also they didn't want it to cause additional instability. Yet over here, they're putting one piece of this mechanic that requires a lot of other parts to be polished up and worked on. So it's just this annoying inconsistency from CIG, and I think the reason why, of course, is because the Apollo is coming out. But I mean, who cares if the Apollo doesn't have its medgel gameplay in yet? Like, who cares about any of that yet? If we're not going to have updated beacons, we're not going to have updated UI, then all of this is just going to be pain points for players before we even get those systems in. So why don't you just delay bringing in medgel and have it come in a little bit later after we have all these really cool respawn UI elements and functional beacons? It doesn't make any sense. I understand why they're doing it, and in fact, I actually enjoy the fact that they're doing it. And I'll again explain a little bit later, but right now, currently, it just doesn't make sense, especially after we saw them delay engineering as well. It feels weird, especially with the Apollo coming out. But that being said, how does it actually play in our hands? Right now, currently, the builds are in Wave 1, so you can try it for yourself if you have access to Wave 1. And in my testing, it's been okay. There's definitely some weirdness with it. As you'll see on the footage on screen, I recharged my Polaris here with med canisters. Then I respawned because there's also a bug right now currently where if you put something into the med gel canisters, sometimes what happens is your ability to use your F key, your interaction key, just completely breaks. Your character is just broken, so you have to either respawn or go back to menu and come back, and that'll fix the problem. The other current issue in the game right now is the UI is busted right now. You can see on the top right of this medical screen here, it says 0 out of 0 gels. I actually just recharged these beds, and you can see it says there's nothing available. So that's obviously something that they have to work on and improve. That's something that's obviously going to get in place by the time this build goes out. It also says the same thing for when I try to treat myself. As you can see, it's all cut off there. It says the cost is 50,000. It doesn't tell you 50,000 of what, it just says 50,000. So that is the cost it tells you. We know that it's going to be 50 centa SCU, and then that says 50,000. So it's just the weird UI inconsistency issues with that as well too. Sometimes CIG gets confused as to whether they want to talk about micro centa or regular SCUs, and it shows in the UI as well too. So yeah, it's just if you're going to say 50 centa SCU, then just put 50 centa SCU in the actual medical interface. As you can see here, my F key broke again as well because I just put in that canister, so I had to respawn again. So jumping ahead, I went ahead and poked some fights with Xenothreat in Pyro, simply because there is a lot of Xenothreat that you get to fight. Also, Xenothreat is also the beneficiary of a new thing in this build coming out, which is dropships. We've had dropship AI reinforcements before in the past, and then CIG took them out, then they put them back in, and then they took them out again. In the PTU right now, currently, this is probably the best iteration of AI dropship reinforcements. There's obviously the cool new sound effect for the dropships being quantumed in, and also the AI leave the ship appropriately, and they converge on your position very, very fast. As you'll see here, I'm going to just jump the footage ahead a little bit and take a listen. You're going to hear, after I start poking the bear a little bit with Xenothreat, I start picking some fights with them. They eventually call for reinforcements, and you can actually hear and see the reinforcements arrive. And then I'm going to jump the footage and show you what it looks like when the reinforcements actually converge on my position. As you can see there's a lot of guys that showed up to take me down. That took about probably between 3 to 5 minutes, depending on the size of the settlement, for the ships to land, drop off their troops, and then those troops to converge on your position. And yeah, it drops a lot of guys off, and it's really cool. It's just a really fun spectacle of watching these guys get reinforced into position, and then you having to now fight them off. So you do get a few minutes of reprieve. Once you hear them come in, you know that you have some time remaining that you can start to do whatever you need to do there, such as looting, taking whatever you need, and then getting out of dodge before you run into the pack of enemies that start to show up and try to take you down. It's pretty cool, and I quite enjoy this change. Like I said, we've had this in the past before, and it kind of had varying degrees of success. Sometimes it was really cool, but most of the time it just didn't work, probably because the servers just couldn't handle it. Now it looks like CIG is bringing it back in with a little bit more polish and flair, as well as some of the AI updates that we got recently, and it seems to really be a nice touch. Hopefully it will stay this awesome looking as you see here when it goes live, because obviously as soon as things touch live, things tend to fall apart, so we'll see if that remains. And what's cool is the size of the settlement affects the amount of reinforcements are sent to that settlement. In this case, I'm attacking a much smaller Xenothreat outpost here, and it's going to have one ship respawn instead of the multiple you heard before. However, the AI coming in dropships as backup is not 100% perfect quite yet. As you'll see here, I was leaving this outpost, and then I just came across some AI who were the backup that was sent to come take me out, but they didn't show up the entire time. They only just showed up as I was leaving, and you can see they were stuck over in this area of the outpost for some strange reason. And I had to just run for cover. There was just so many guys, and I was trying to heal. I was right-clicking as much as I could, but unfortunately, because of the server lag, I was right-clicking trying to get it to target my arm, but unfortunately the game had other ideas because of everything being tied to the server, unfortunately. So I used my Pisces to attack this outpost, and I wanted to demonstrate the respawn. So I had already filled it with a canister, hit backspace. I am now respawning at this Pisces, and I'm going to go ahead and jump back up to when I attack these guys once more. So I wanted to pick a fight with them once more again because my Pisces was now empty, and I wanted to see if they were able to kill me if I still could respawn in the Pisces. So I took out these two guys here. I didn't see the pack, and I wasn't sure where the pack of enemies actually were. So I just kind of stood here picking some guys off. I heard some shots off to my right. I thought it was like, and then I look over to my right. There's just a whole fire team. It's just sitting up there. I'm trying to heal myself desperately. I have no cover whatsoever. So these guys, I love this mechanic. I love the fact that these guys, you know, are just a full-on squad that gets deployed to take you out. It is a really cool mechanic, and I want to see more of this at other outposts. I do hope it is coming to other outposts. Right now, currently, as far as I know, it's only the Xenothreat. I haven't tested other places. It's possible that it is in other places. I haven't seen it yet. So you can see here, my Pisces was out of gel. So it says ICU, not enough med gel remaining. So it sent me back to my home. In this case was Ruin, which again, you have to make sure that your med bed is fully topped off. If you don't, you get sent to your home regardless of where it is. So if my home was at Lorville and I died and had no med gel in my station for my medical ship, I would have gotten sent back to Lorville. Now, personally, I don't think this is a good system. I think CIG should make it so that way if there is a nearby medical facility, such as a station or a hospital that is closest to the player, it should send them there instead. But as it stands right now, if you run out of gel, you go straight to your home, which I don't think is an actual good design decision. Now, we know CIG said in the future, in a later build after 4.3.1 comes out, we're going to get UI updates to streamline this process a little bit more. But as it stands right now for this current build, it's not good. I don't like the fact that it sends you home. It should at least send you to the nearest medical facility. That's just really good common sense design, just because it makes things a lot simpler for the player, and it just takes a lot of the friction away from the whole process. Now, earlier in the video, I said I enjoy this mechanic, and specifically why I enjoy this is because it further involves logistics into any type of large-scale organized operation. In this case, for example, I'm part of the Forgotten Heralds, and we have a logistics core, and their job is to manage logistics, especially as the game continues to expand. And one of the things that's got them excited about this is now they have to pre-plan operations ahead of time to ensure that there is enough gel capacity available for all players involved in the operation. And this all scales linearly from the smaller groups and solo gameplay all the way up to large-scale org gameplay. Think about it. If you're part of an org and you have, say, 25 players operating as part of a group doing some type of event, whether it's Stormbreaker or whatever, if your players are getting injured and then returning to the ship, that's going to cost you medgel. If they're dying and getting killed, they are going to respawn. That's going to cost you medgel as well. You have to plan ahead. If you plan on using like a Polaris or an Idris or any type of flagship for your operations, you're going to have to decide how much you're going to need to bring with you, and you're going to need to plan ahead for how much you're going to need for that operation. If you are underprepared, you are going to lose a long-term conflict. Think about it like this. Let's say you have an Idris. You have 25 players on that Idris, and you're using them to, say, assault, I don't know, an outpost or something like that, or anything. Let's keep it within the context of how the game is played right now. Let's not do theory crafting for the future. So let's say you have these players on the Idris. They're attacking an outpost down below. Then all of a sudden, who knows, another organization shows up and starts a fight with you. Now you have a problem. Because you've had players that are injured and have to respawn, you have used some of your resources, and you may not be able to engage in a long-term conflict with this other organization, not unless you have prepared for that eventuality. Now let's scale down even smaller. Let's say you're in a carrack and you have left your carrack out in the open. You and your friends decided to go fly away on, I don't know, a Pisces or something like that. You land in an outpost, you do your thing, and then you get back and you find out players got into your carrack somehow. They got in. You land, you get out, all of a sudden you have enemy players running around your carrack. You guys are fighting back and forth, and you're also respawning on the bed on the carrack. At that point, if you decided not to top off your meds, or you ran out, or those players came in and took the meds out of that station, you are screwed. So you have to make sure you plan for it. And this doesn't even account for the future. Let's say that carrack gets disabled in the future. Like let's say they get distorted, and then there's pirates that are boarding that carrack, and they are now fighting the crew. That crew can continually respawn until they run out of meds. Currently, how it works in PvP for any large-scale multi-crew operation where you're trying to take control of, say, like an Idris, a Polaris, or any type of multi-crew ship, the first thing on the docket for the assaulting team is to take control of the medical facilities, because respawns are infinite. So you can just keep throwing warm bodies at the problem until the problem goes away. Of course, that assumes that your attacking team doesn't have a medical ship, which you probably should if you're smart, but I digress. At that point, instead of focusing all of your effort on attacking and taking control of the medical facilities, which you probably still should do anyway, you still can wear down the defending team through attrition alone. Eventually, they are going to run out of gel, and they just can't respawn, and they're going to lose control of the ship at that point. So there's a level of dynamism that is brought about by this system. But anyway, in practice, it's still very buggy in the current builds. One of the bigger problems I ran into is if you actually tie yourself to a bed. For example, I used a Polaris and I tested it on a Polaris. And the problem is that if you tie yourself to one bed on the Polaris, you are tied specifically to that bed on the Polaris. So if that bed runs out of gel, you get sent back home, despite the fact that your other beds can be open and have gel. This, of course, is a very, very dumb design decision, and I hope that CIG is going to address that by the time this patch goes live, because that's a very silly oversight. And of course, this is a fresh build. It's just one of the first public builds that just came out, so I am hoping, I am praying that CIG is actually looking at that and they go, yeah, we're going to fix that, obviously, because it's very, very silly. Now, I could yak about this for hours on end, but I've already gone through the meat and potatoes of what we have currently. Things are obviously going to change as the weeks progress and CIG works on the builds a little bit more. Hopefully they address a lot of those issues I talked about, the bugs, as well as some of the UI issues, and of course some of the weird design issues with the game that don't really function well with this new mechanic, such as the way Respawn sends you back home, for example. We'll see how things change. We'll also see if CIG decides to balance the costs. We'll see. Again, nothing is ever set in stone. I'm always of the mindset of, hey, let's let CIG cook. If it doesn't work, obviously nothing is set in stone. They could always revert things, or they could change things. It's always available. As someone who is a co-leader of a large org, it is always fun to see the simulation that the game that we are part of become a lot more in-depth, require a lot more tactics, a lot more organization, and a lot more foresight when you're trying to organize a large group of players. it just makes things a lot more fulfilling and more fun, at least for me personally. And also you guys get to see a lot of that come to fruition in the terms of like of our videos and stuff like that. For example, you're seeing us doing our naval combat training, which we do every so often. And I know a lot of you guys want to see a lot of the naval stuff come back. I had done videos talking about naval combat, and that is definitely coming back. And these videos that you see here are kind of a little bit of a teaser of that. I'm going to be doing more content covering naval combat, tactics involved with that, and things going forward. But anyway, we're done here. Let's go ahead and move on to the outro. So folks, if you did indeed enjoy this video, please leave a like, as it really does help out the channel. And of course, if you want to watch more videos like this and much more down the line, be sure to subscribe as well. And if you want to go a little bit above and beyond and get some additional perks along the way, consider becoming a channel member like these fine folks right here, whose contributions help me out immensely when it comes to putting videos like this together for you all. But until next time, fly safe, keep those med gel canisters topped off, and I'll see you all in the black.